Hi guys, today we're making sardines and these are the type of fish you will need. They are called Titus fish or shower or whatever in your area they will be called, but these are the proper Titus fish for sardines. You can also use mackerel, but preferably this fish because they are less bony than most fishes. So the first thing I did was clean the fish properly and I removed the head, as you can see, and then I proceeded to split this fish into, you can do 3 or 4 however you like to cut it, it doesn't really matter, but Titus usually use just the tails, but because we're making this from scratch we're going to be using everything together. So these are the ingredients I'll be using: some fennel seeds, some black peppercorns, and some bay leaves, and of course some salt. And then we're going to also need a very good quality vegetable oil, and I chose power oil for this. And we're going to be making all of this in our pressure cooker. You can use a regular pot for this, but the whole point is to cook it for a very long time, and the pressure pot will just help you manage time better than using a regular pot. But if you do not have a pressure pot, you can use a regular pot, it's still going to come out amazing. So the first thing I'm going to do is layer my spices, starting from the bay leaves and then some peppercorns, and then I'll add some fennel seeds, just a little bit. You can replace the fennel seeds for thyme or rosemary, whatever that suits your preference, and then I added some salt. After that, I layered my fish just one after the other. I just laid this flat down just so that they maintain this position while cooking. While cooking, we are not going to be stirring this or shaking it or anything because we do not want the fish to break apart. After the first layer, I salted it a little bit and then proceeded to make the second layer on top of the first layer of fish. And I'm not using so much fish for this, so that's why I'm using this very small pressure cooker for it. If you're using more fish, you need to make it bigger because you don't need the fish cramped up. After layering all my fish, I proceed to repeat exactly the same spices we used before. Don't worry, all the ingredients I use will be listed in the description box below, so be sure to check that out for reference. I layered all my fish and then proceeded to add some salt as the final sealant. The reason I add this amount of salt is so that it also serves as a preservative for the fish. Okay, you do not need to add this amount of salt. If you are not a fan, please skip it. Just add just a little bit, and you do not need to add Maggi, please. They don't add Maggi into sardine. But anyways, I proceeded to also add in some pepper because the Nigerian in me just kept screaming, add a little bit of pepper, add a little bit of pepper. And I listened. But rather than regular pepper, I added just yaji so that it doesn't have such hot kick. And this is just for my house, so if you don't like pepper, you can also skip that out. After that, I proceed to add 2 cups of um neutral oil, which I'm using power vegetable oil for this. This is not a sponsored ad, but it's power oil is a very good quality vegetable oil, and that's what I'm using. So I added 2 full cups of this just until I could see the oil almost submerging the fish. And then I also added 2 cups of water. You're going to submerge oil and water because you're not frying the fish, you're boiling it. So the water is going to boil out and evaporate through the cooking process. And guys, after this, I proceed to cover my pot and then put it on my heat or fire, whichever one. So guys, making sardines at home is quite easy. The only thing, like, look at how fast it took us to just prep all these things, and now we're just going to let the heat do all the work for us. I'm going to let it simmer here for about 4 hours, and after it's done, you're going to see that all the water, sorry, has already evaporated, and what is left is just the oil. Now you have to constantly check this like every 30 minutes just to make sure that it doesn't scorch and burn or fry to crisps, so that you keep adding more water if needed. I added water about 2 times while cooking this for the 4 hours, and I just maintained the 2 cups of water every time I had to add. Now, to test for doneness, take a bony part of the fish and just proceed to crush that with your hands. If it crushes so seamlessly like this, you know that your fish is ready. If not, put it back on fire, add a little bit more water, and continue boiling. Now for storage, we need a glass jar. Do not use plastic, use a glass jar. And I'm just repurposing this old my Bama mayonnaise jars. So let me know in the comment, do you throw out your Bama jars or do you keep them to repurpose? I always repurpose my Bama jar, and I use a lot of Bama through the week, so I have a lot of Bama jars. Okay, I use. Now the first thing we're going to do is sterilize these jars, because we do not want a situation where they start to build on mold and whatnot. That is why you need a glass jar for this. So we're going to sterilize our jars first, and afterwards we're going to proceed to store them. The first thing is that I put water on fire for a while. As you can see, the water is very hot right now, and then I proceed to drop the jars into the water and let that simmer for about 3 minutes. I let that simmer for 3. You don't want this to boil, because if it boils, it's going to crack your jars or break them. You want this on a very low heat. If your water boiled before putting the jars, then you obviously do not need to boil them. You can just leave them in the hot water for about a minute. What's going on? You can just leave them in the hot water for about a minute and then proceed to take them out. Now, another good fact about sterilizing your jars is that it makes the band of the label come out easily. So if you have a Bama jar and you're trying to remove the label of the jar, just soak them in water and they would come off very, very easily. Now that the jars are ready, I'm going to scoop them out of the water and place them on a countertop. Guys, you need to be very careful with this process, because the jars are flaming hot, like they are very, very, very hot. And guys, you do not need to rinse these jars after you bring them from the water, because it forfeits the whole point of sterilizing them. You're just going to place them on the countertop, and trust me when I tell you that the water content in the jars will dry up faster than shadow, like in a second. After that, our sardines are already all cooled down, and we're going to proceed to package this into those jars that we sterilized. This happened all within a minute. Even though I touched the jars with my hands, the jars are still quite hot. Okay, do not wait for the jars to cool down completely, because I don't know, just don't wait for the jars to cool down completely. I proceed to put the fish one at a time. I do not want the fish to be broken apart. I just want them whole, so that whenever I need them, I'm just going to pick out one from the jar and use. Now, the reason I chose to make my own sardines is that I love using sardine and egg for egg wraps every morning for breakfast. It's just a very, very easy breakfast that's to go to, and especially now that I'm working outside of my house, meaning I need to step out of my house every blessed day, and it's quite challenging keeping up with food. So I just prep this and keep in my fridge. Now guys, after putting all the fish in the jar, I proceed to add the vegetable oils that we used in cooking this fish in the jar, because the oil will serve as a preservative for the fish. And now this is what it would look like when you're done. This is what it looked like after I was done, and I proceeded to keep this in my fridge. It can stay in your fridge for up to 3 months, and it can stay on the counter shelf for 14 days up until 1 month. But that's all you need to make your own sardines at home. Let me know what next you like to see me try.